Good morning, and well, for some of us, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We've got to keep all these time zones in mind. And welcome to the LESS Post Conference. This is our extra day we ended up adding just due to so many great submissions and wanting to continue the conversations. Today, we're going to be doing a deep dive with our fantastic presenters, focusing on starting, supporting, assessing our evidence synthesis services in libraries. So we want to welcome you. Thank you for joining us for the last day of LESS. This is it.
Very last one. So thank you so much for joining. As Janessa said, and I am just resorting my screen. Sorry about that. So we do want to remind you that our code of conduct is still in play here. If you find any violations or experience anything that you're concerned about, please don't hesitate to fill out that form and let us know. We also would like to do a reminder for the Q&A. So please put the Q&A. Excuse me. I'm messing up because I realized Janessa was supposed to do this slide and I just started talking. But
I think that's completely fine. You're doing great. Take this one, Cosette.
the Q&A is where you should put your questions. Please don't forget to tell us who your questions are for. This is going to be especially important today because, as we'll remind you, we are going to be taking a 30-minute break between the lightning talks and the Q&A portion of today.
And in your Q&A, if there are any outstanding questions left behind, that's what we're doing in our 30-minute break. We'll be making sure that those transfer into our open Q&A happening later. Other reminders, chat is open on all sessions. Even with our Zoom webinars, we have had such a rousing chat experience throughout LESS. We've got some chatty folks here, and I think that the resources shared in chat, the discussions that start in chat have been so rich. I'm so glad we're able to capture those and we'll be able to share them later. Another reminder, though, that today is going to go really fast. I feel like it's flown by no matter what, but we have so much to talk about today. And we want to make sure that our chat within sessions is related to what our presenters are speaking about. If the presenter changes, if the topic changes verbally, we want to be respectful to our presenters and make sure they know we're listening. So if our conversations are going to continue, if we have other things to discuss, that is the role of our lobby chat. Lobby chat is also super fun. I've been in there. You can emoji react to lobby chat and react in ways that we cannot in our Zoom webinars. So keep that in mind for non-session related chat, for continuing discussions, and even for posing questions that we haven't gotten to in our different sessions.
And without further ado, I'm going to be moderating this portion, the lightning talk portion of this day. And we are going to get started. Here is our overview of what today is going to look like. We have 7 fabulous lightning talks. About halfway through after the third lightning talk, we are going to take a 10-minute break. And then at the end of the lightning talk sessions, we'll take a 30-minute break. We'll then be rejoining, not in this Zoom room, but in the next Zoom room that's in your lobby, the Zoom lobby. That's the one that's called Discussion and Q&A. That's going to be a meeting setup. And I'm looking at the number of people we have in here, and it's a pretty large group, which is really exciting. So we might still use the Q&A feature in that session too. But that will start with a 30-minute guided Q&A question. We've got some questions we shared with panelists ahead of time. And then we have an open floor Q&A, put them on the spot a little bit. But without, as I said earlier, further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, let Michelle Zaffron take over with her first talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about what we did or what we're doing at the University at Buffalo about the service and policy that we created that went live in September of 2023. So when we first started doing these projects, same as probably everyone else, we didn't have a formal policy or plan. And like many other medical libraries at a similar stage, pretty soon we found ourselves with problems as common as the weeds in this image. And demand for our services was high. And without a formal policy, sometimes our librarians found themselves with a lack of protection when these projects got out of hand. And sometimes projects would languish and not get published because the teams did not fully understand or comprehend what a systematic review entailed. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, we've all lived this. We also had found we had a lack of consistency internally in how we were handling reviews. There was concern about inequitable workload, and we were also not adequately tracking the time we spent on reviews, and often we were duplicating effort, and all of this, no surprise, was leading to burnout. So my co-authors and I did some benchmarking. We looked at what other people were doing, some of what about half of us are already doing. We talked to our team members who did reviews and got feedback from them. And we created our own policy, a 3-tiered service model, as well as an intake form and an MOU. It took us about 6 months to develop all this. And then because we were using an MOU, and at the time we did not have a site license for Covidence, and we were tying librarian involvement to the purchase of individual Covidence licenses. So that required the formal review and approval of our AUL as well as our Director of Resource Management. So we did 2 LibGuides. The first is your sort of standard guide with educational resources for teams looking to do these kinds of projects. The second's focused on our service, and it clarifies what each of these 3 levels entails, and it sets out expectations for both the librarians and the research teams. For instance, we now require the PI to be present at all meetings. A lot of times they would send their grad students and then things would go pear-shaped. And we've adjusted this as we started our pilot. For instance, now we include residents and fellows in with students, which restricts them to the first 2 levels of service. And we require a faculty member to attend those meetings. We've had to watermark our MOU. We had teams who would fill out the MOU, but before they even met with us or filled out the intake form. And as you've been hearing all week, we did the same thing. Our intake form mirrors a protocol because we find it gives the research teams context and a framework to understand what's required in doing these reviews, and it better prepares them for actually registering a protocol. And while these are our intentions, no surprise, I'm sure we all have this experience, people do not always read. And sometimes it's a challenge to get excited teams to stop and absorb the information we provide. So as far as tracking goes, we started out, we looked at some of the options out there, which were like LibInsights, Teams, Microsoft Project, and we ended up deciding to use Airtable to track librarian time and other aspects of the review. And we're indebted to Whitney Townsend at Michigan for her help and for the copy of the base they use. And then our data librarian, Jocelyn Swick-Jemison, has been working with us to adapt the base so that it better suits our own specific needs. And she's built in data tracking functions, which is what you see on the slide here, as well as like databases, or sorry, dashboards. This allows our evidence synthesis coordinator to have a better handle on how to assign the projects in a more equitable fashion. And Airtable has also allowed us to demonstrate the time commitment involved in these projects to upper administration. So we still have a lot of work to do in our garden, but it's in a better place than when we first started. It's a little too early to tell if these efforts have had an effect on project completion, but we are seeing positive growth in terms of the the researchers and teams who are starting these projects. We have anecdotal evidence that they're coming to those first consult meetings in a much better, better informed. The policies also helped us in, resulted in administrative buy-in, and librarians have reported finding themselves in a stronger position in regards to negotiating boundaries, roles, authorship. We're still seeking balance and continuing with our gardening analogy. We are still trying to find the right amount of sun, shade, partial sun for our librarians in terms of workload and balance distribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And we are going to welcome next Jade Wynn.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for coming. I'm going to start my timer because 5 minutes is really short. And in great contrast from our last speaker, Michelle, there's a ton of stuff on my slides. I'm just going to tell a story, but the slides are available for you in case you wanted more information. So at USC, mine's from seeds to papyrus because we really did not have an evidence synthesis service outside our medical science campuses. And ironically, at the time that we started getting a lot of faculty asking about it, it was also when the social science or the medical library was deciding that they were going to sunset their program because they were not doing, they were not getting to completion. So our seeds really started when COVID started, and we started having faculty members asking about it. And so since we were all working remotely, my dean asked me if I would take on learning this. I knew nothing, and going ahead and starting a service. So I looked at the data from the medical science library and tried to find out why they weren't going to completion, where their drop-off point was, how I might design ours differently so that projects came to fruition to papyrus or publication in this case. So I went ahead and started. And of course, the first thing I had to do was to go to ESI. I also went to MLA training so that I understood more about what they were. I didn't know much about this at all. And you can see all the things that I did in the brief history. One of the things, and this has come up across the conference, is we really needed to set some policy and requirements. And we needed the ability to say no. One of the first things I noticed is I had a slew of inquiries from PhD students that thought that they could use a systematic review for chapter 2. So very quickly, I learned I needed to get some procedures up so that those people understood a team project could not be part of their dissertation. I had to learn to say no. It was a common theme. We were chatting about it before the session started. And so what I did, instead of doing a form, I actually do an intake meeting, and I call it my mean meeting when I'm trying to train other librarians. And what I do is I set up what's going to happen, because if they partner with us, it's a very high touch service. What I found with the medical science, health sciences campus is they seem to be dropping off when the librarian was stepping out. So when there were tasks they needed to do that we may or may not take part in is when they were losing their whole teams. So I wanted it to be high touch, but I also wanted the librarians to have the opportunity to have stages where they can or cannot participate. So my intake meeting is kind of really scary, where I basically say, you have to have a team. If you don't have 3 or 4 people, I can't work with you. If you're a PhD student, it cannot be part of your chapter 2. I lay out all the places, and this is all in my LibGuide, my slides, everything's linked for you. I lay out all the places that librarians may or may not participate, but I still send a weekly email, keeping everybody on track. So on some projects, if they have a small team and I have time, I'm happy to help screen abstracts. But on other projects, I just don't have the time. I want to make sure that they have the manpower that they can actually do it. The other thing I did is learn to exploit technology. This was, it was very difficult. We do have a site license for Covidence, but believe it or not, it was very difficult for me to get a Zotero license. So just little things that I had to, I didn't know because I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So I've really learned to exploit machine learning. I'm beta testing new software when it comes available, exploring new searching methods, and integrating AI. So all those little seeds from the faculty asking for help to me getting trained and setting up our service has now led since it was about 2021 when we really fully were offering what I call as a high touch service. And I have forms that go through each stage of the systematic review, starting with the intake and then moving to, okay, I think this team can do it. And then we have like our first meeting, and I scare them again with all the forms and a shared drive. And I've had 23 publications and presentations since I started. So I like to think it's very successful. And I'm going to try to click on this and see if it pulls up. I think I can just pull it up for you. But if you're interested, my LibGuide is in the links. And all of my materials I'm hoping you can see now my research guide. All the materials that I use, I've shared and made them open access. So you can use them here. They're at the very bottom, the USC developed templates, but you can see how successful I've been both in publishing actual systematic reviews and publishing papers about the process, especially when we brought in machine learning. You can see with the Mozgai group, we've done a lot. Their technology group on campus. I've done another one I got the Journal of Affective Disorders, and Dr. O and I have just sent a second one. So that high touch service, you can see by the names, it's bringing people back. And so it's no longer just, oh, it's one and done. These people are really interested, and we're publishing in high impact journals and a lot of conference presentations. And I'm really happy to be able to just share very quickly a little bit about what USC has done. And we're happy to go into any questions that you have in the Q&A session. So I have stopped sharing.
Thank you so much, Jade. Fantastic. And I'm definitely interested in learning more about your service. This is really interesting stuff.
Everything is on the LibGuide to share.
Wonderful. I love that. Next up, we have Katie Hutt.
Hello, I'm going to put my timer on too, so I make sure I don't go over. So good day, everyone, depending on where you are. I am Katie Hutt, and I am the business and econ librarian at American University. So what I'm going to go over today in these short 5 minutes are some ideas to get your evidence synthesis service started and get buy-in without getting overwhelmed. At least what has worked for us at American University. So my colleague, Clarissa Eisen, and I attended ESI together in March of 2023. And after that, we were overwhelmed by all the options we had for the future. So the first thing we wanted to do was determine what we could realistically provide to support the researchers at American University. Because we're a pretty small library, and each of our librarians is a subject specialist with liaison duties, and we're also a very social science heavy institution. We decided that providing consultation only service would be an appropriate way to start, and we wanted to use an entire academic year. So we used academic year 23 through 24 to do a soft launch, so as not to overwhelm those of us who are doing the work, and to sort of see where the stress points would come in. We initially checked in with our department leadership about what we thought was realistic and what they wanted to see from us. And luckily, we were all on the same page. And I should mention too, our attending the Institute and sort of conceiving of this service that idea sort of did come from on high. The director of our department could see the writing on the wall that this is becoming more and more popular. So we were lucky in that we had that kind of buy-in, right from the get-go from our library administration. So after, sort of conceiving, okay, what is this service going to look like? The first step was to train the other members of the evidence synthesis team. So initially there were 4 librarians from the library's research, teaching, and learning department that volunteered to start this evidence synthesis service. And again, only 2 of us attended Evidence Synthesis Institute. So when we came back, we trained the other 2 librarians, and we basically tried to condense all 16 hours of ESI into about 2 hours. And then we worked together, the 4 of us, to create a list of SMART goals. So for those of you who don't know what that acronym stands for, it is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And some of our goals were to work with faculty who'd previously done this kind of work so they could help spread the word, to create campus partners. We had a pretty achievable goal of working with 4 teams of researchers. And we also wanted to create LibGuide and other documentation for the service. So the second step was to introduce evidence synthesis to the library. So again, we're a really social science heavy institution. We are not super heavy, don't have a med school, and we're not super heavy in the hard sciences. So a lot of the librarians were not familiar with it. So we initially presented to our colleagues in, again, our department, which was research, teaching, and learning. We reviewed what evidence synthesis is. Again, not everyone was familiar. And then we also went over our vision for the service and our expectations for our fellow subject liaisons. And an added benefit of doing this was our colleagues helped us to identify some potential partners that we could reach out to. We also wrote an article in our library's internal newsletter in the fall, and this past spring we presented library-wide. And really the intent on doing that was just, again, so people knew what we were doing. And if someone had a question about it, they would say, oh, that sounds familiar. This is who you should talk to. So we next wanted to have a research guide and a toolkit at the ready when we started meeting with people. There were a lot of guides we've used as inspiration, Cornell, Deakin University, McGill, UNC Chapel Hill, University of Maryland, University of Minnesota, UT Austin, University of Victoria, Western University, and then the ACRL SMIG guide were all really helpful. And we also had outside people review the guide just to make sure it made sense to those of us who are not super deep in it. And then we really wanted to concentrate on creating cross-campus connections. So one of our most important connections was the Center for Teaching, Research, and Learning. We reached out to them kind of early on and started working with them throughout the process because they work with faculty on their research. And we worked with them in a few different ways. We presented during a conference that they sponsor. We emailed with them, and then we also wrote an article for their newsletter. And then we also worked with another colleague in the academic technology department. So they kind of run Canvas and some of our other e-tech projects, who was also launching a digital humanities service. And she gave us some pointers as to how to launch a service. She reminded us that marketing is a huge part of launching a service, especially something like this, but not a lot of people know what it is. And then she said, you want to work with the targeted partners. For her, that was students. For us, that would be faculty it would be faculty, right? And then she also agreed that starting small was the way to go because you can see where it creates strain. And then our last step was really reaching out to faculty. We began reaching out to our veterans, those who had already published or researched, using evidence synthesis, thinking that their colleagues may go to them for advice and then they would recommend us. We also worked really closely with our library communications team. And again, worked closely with our Center for Research, Teaching, and Learning. We did a workshop for them, and we've worked with them in other ways as well. And then we worked with our liaison librarians to get in touch with their departments when we officially launched the service, which was just in May. And then our next steps are going to be to really analyze our metrics and continue to learn by coming to conferences like this.
Thank you so much, Katie. And we're a little ahead of schedule, so I'm thinking we'll just go ahead and ask the questions that have been put into the Q&A so far. And Katie, since you just did your presentation, I'll ask the question for you first. Have you published, or do you have your, let me rephrase this, I'm sorry. Have you published, or do you plan to publish your abbreviated ESI curriculum?
Oh, we haven't. No, that's a great idea. That's a really good idea. I would have to kind of go back. So this was at this point, it was not quite a year and a half ago, but almost. Fantastic idea. We can certainly look into that. Thank you for the question.
It is a great question. Maybe an opportunity for a collaboration with those groups too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then I believe that the other question that we have in the Q&A is for Jade. But I'm sure others might want to chime in too, potentially. So at what point would you say it's imperative that the institution obtain a Zotero license?
It was really, I didn't know again what I didn't know. And unlike others, it was just me. Now I have a team of librarians that are trained, they pair with me, but it was pretty quick because once I had my first team that I was sure could do this task and we started searching, of course, I ended up, there was like small Zotero license. So I used it without knowing that there would be a cap on my projects. But what ended up happening was it was so full from my first, it was a scoping review. It was a lot of articles that the actual center I was working with purchased it for me for the first year because it was taking so long for me to get. So they bought it and then they bought me a user's license. So it took me that year. I had to go back to my institution and say, this is embarrassing. We're offering this high touch service and I need the tools and able to be able to do it, especially because it was just me. And so it did take me like months and months, but my team, the team I was working with had grant funds and was able to purchase the Zotero. Very embarrassing, but true story.
But those sorts of stories are so important for this kind of setting, right?
Yeah.
Because I think we can all find ourselves missing the key ingredients we might have needed but didn't know.
And yeah, and especially when you don't know. And some people might prefer, and note that Zotero is not the only software. I found it easiest. I was learning enough other stuff about evidence synthesis that it was easiest, of course, for me to use Zotero. And that's why I demanded that I needed it.
Well, that's great. And we have a follow-up question just for clarification. When you're talking about the Zotero license, just to confirm, you're talking about getting more storage. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a free version that will give you a little bit of storage, but I found my first review capped that, and I don't know what that cap is, but clearly it wouldn't hold 13,000 articles. And so when you buy the license that's unlimited, it's only $100 a year. So it's not like it's a super expensive software like Covidence, but it just was something that, needed to go through the ranks to get approved. And they weren't sure why I needed it. They were like, well, we have this one version. And I'm like, that won't work. We need unlimited storage. I'm only into one project. So I don't know what that cap is, but that project it originally downloaded close to 10,000 articles. So you can see that it wouldn't hold, that was too much.
Yeah, and for some projects, 10,000 is not that much, really, for a systematic review. So I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. So we'll go ahead and take our 12-minute break. We'll try to get back on schedule and meet back here at 12 p.m. Eastern. You can leave the room open. We're going to be meeting in this room again. So we'll see you in about 12 minutes.
Quick 12-minute break. Feel free to continue asking questions or continuing the chat. We just want to be respectful to our different speaker schedules. And we had a request for more breaks, so no problem getting that in.
Yeah.
And we're so excited. We have, I keep calling everyone friends. We have 160 so friends joining us today. Nice call on editing the break too.
Just in case somebody comes in and isn't sure why we're not talking.
Wanted to add, Jill Eisner asked a really good question on the lobby to point everyone's attention to. What do you do about the evidence synthesis projects that they don't tell you it's an evidence synthesis project? at the beginning and you think you're just helping them with a lit search and they come back months later. That happens to us a lot. So I put in my response to that, but I'm so interested in what everyone else's suggestions are, because it's one of those gnarly little bits we don't often get to talk about or even present about, because it's kind of one of the underbelly of evidence synthesis services.
It is. Definitely looking forward to reading through that thread.
Yeah, Michelle says it's such a difficult conversation to have. It really is. And I respect that sometimes even ideas about what a research project is going to be, that can change over time. Maybe you do a literature search and realize, oh, wait, this can be a bigger thing. This might need to be a scoping review, or maybe you want to elevate it to systematic review. But as the librarians, it is our job to tell them, well, that search I did to help you out before, we're not just going to continue with that one.
No.
Please.
But it's a good exploratory search, right? That we can build upon. Yeah.
The tagline for
Framing.
a future less should be like, welcome to less. We're going to talk about hard conversations.
Yeah. All right. Well,
We'll be quiet and respect a break.
yeah.
Not our morning show, though it could be.
But we'll come back at the 10 mark of the hour. 10 past the hour.
Well, hey, Cosette. What did you do with your 10 minutes?
I read through some of the lobby chat.
Same.
Like you said, very interesting stuff. So,
Very interesting. The to-do list gets ever longer.
and we're coming back just a little bit early, but I wanted to give our next presenters a moment to get set up if they'd like to.
So everyone, this is your warning. Refill those coffee cups. Get your pencils and notebooks, or however folks take notes, ready. And we'll get started again in just about a minute.
Yeah.
All right. My clock just turned, so I'm now going to introduce our next speakers, Maylin Lay and Caroline Monin. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. So Maylin and I will be talking today about the trends we saw in evidence synthesis after doing an analysis of our tiered service model. So before we begin, we'd just like to acknowledge that Maylin and I are grateful to be joining you today from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Inawak, Aninawak, Dakota, Iote, and Dene, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. So to give you a bit of context on our project, in 2017, we were experiencing growing demand for librarian support of evidence synthesis in health sciences. And so we instituted a 3-tier model. Tier 1 was instruction. We teach a 5-part series at least once a year. And Tier 2 is consultation. This is typically reserved for students or when librarians are too busy for faculty requests. And then Tier 3 meant that the librarian was a collaborator on the research team. And we explicitly stated that Tier 3 service meant a co-authorship credit in any research output. So for our research project, we wanted to find the trends and the types of ES, which disciplines were publishing ES? Is it time to expand beyond health? We were also interested in how librarians were credited. Did co-authorship grow when we were explicit about it? So to answer our questions, we searched for all evidence syntheses with a U of M affiliation. We searched in Scopus, PubMed, Web of Science, specifically the Social Sciences Citation Index and the Arts and Humanities Citation Index. We screened all articles in Covidence and then completed a content analysis looking at study design, subject area, and librarian involvement. We used Clarivate journal citation reports to find the journal impact factor in the year of publication. And we also separated our authors into 2 groups. We separated them into primary and other. Primary meant that the U of M author was either first, last, or the corresponding author. And then other meant that the U of M author was in the middle of the pack. And what this did was it really helped us identify who our core users were, and of those publications, who was most likely to use our service. And now I'll pass it on to Maylin.
Great. So what did our analysis find? The graph here shows that the growth in ES has increased 54% since 2017, with consistent increases year to year. The graph also shows which types of ES are being created, and it might be too small to see, but the colors to be aware of are purple for systematic reviews, blue for scoping reviews, and green for systematic reviews and meta-analyses. And we can clearly see that the number of scoping reviews being published has grown substantially, with a 400% increase since 2017. And the number of systematic reviews and meta-analysis systematic reviews is mostly the same over time. And then when we look at librarian involvement, there are several interesting trends found. So 57% of published ES involved a librarian, with 56% as co-authors, 25% mentioned by name in the methods, and 23% mentioned in the acknowledgements. And the most important thing to note here is that since we introduced our 3-tier model in 2017, at our institution, we have seen a 280% increase in co-authorship. And when we look at what kinds of disciplines are requesting ES, And I know that this kind of ties into what we've been hearing over the last few days about the growth of ES outside of health and how to build services to accommodate those areas. But right now that is not reflected at our institution, where we have not seen an increase in non-health ES numbers over the last 6 years. So it's been very consistent kind of year to year. Of the 8% of all of our screened articles that were non-health, the majority are in psychology, with others in kinesiology, nutrition, et cetera, kind of listed there. And next, when we looked at journal impact factors, so we were looking at the impact factors of journals where the systematic reviews were published. So we found that when a librarian was not involved in a review, the mean journal impact factor was 4.905 and the median was 3.517. However, when a librarian was involved in a review, the mean was 6.795 and the median was 3.955. So we acknowledge that journal impact factors can be a controversial metric, but they are still seen as an indicator of overall journal quality within the academic community. And this kind of finding can be shared when you're advocating for the importance of librarians being involved in evidence synthesis and even for the justification of an evidence synthesis service. So what are our take-home messages after the evaluation of 6 years of an evidence synthesis service with a 3-tiered system? So one is that a tiered model with clear roles, responsibility, and expectations for different levels of service can lead to increased librarian co-authorship on ES projects. Second, when needing to demonstrate the importance of librarians in ES, it can be valuable to point out that ES research with librarian involvement is published in higher impact journals. And finally, while non-health disciplines are publishing ES, the numbers are still relatively low. So if institutions are looking at resourcing and staffing needed for an ES service, it makes sense to focus primarily on the health sciences for the time being, while kind of the other non-health has its chance to kind of grow and take root, as it were. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you so much, Maylin and Caroline. Up next, I am going to welcome Stephanie Henderson and Lauren Robinson.
Thank you. Today, we're going to talk about our presentation, Join Our Waitlist, Lessons Learned from 5 Years of Evidence Synthesis report, Support. I'm joined with my colleague, Lauren Robinson. And so we're at the, next slide, please. Yeah, we're at the University of Kentucky Medical Center Library, and we support 6 health colleges: medicine, nursing, pharmacy, dentistry, health sciences, and public health. And then we also support a large academic hospital. And we've started supporting our evidence synthesis in 2019 with just 2 librarians. So we started out as a very basic service. We launched a very basic LibGuide with links that linked out to other resources, and we were using LibAnswers and Insights for our data collection. So we've learned a lot along the way, and in 2020 we introduced an Airtable for statistics, and then we started to introduce a research workshop series with a lot of focus on systematic reviews, because we were getting so many questions and requests for consults. We just couldn't do them all. So we did that systematic review workshop, and then in 2021, we began the redesign of our library guide, and we began developing a DMP tool template for protocol development. And so that was based upon the PRISMA protocol guide. We launched that in 2022. And then we also launched our new LibGuide that introduced a 3-tier model. Again, lots of us are going to this 3-tier models, with co-authorship being required for the highest level of service. And then we also introduced, began a institution-wide cohort because we found that our social sciences teams and our business teams and humanities were also getting systematic review requests. And so we wanted to share our knowledge with them. And in 2023, we survived and we began changes to better support our services. And we actually implemented a wait list. And Lauren, you can take it from there.
Yeah, so we implemented our wait list because we were seeing a surge of requests and we just didn't have time for that. So we implemented that, and then we started, we kind of went through a reorganization as well. And during that process, we were examining options for systematic review support software. We were using a lot of open open access tools like SR Accelerator, and we had EndNote, and that can be all very time consuming. And so to help streamline things, we started investigating a software. We've looked at Covenants and Distiller SR during that time. And then from there, we also began requiring protocols. We had, I think our numbers were like 189 hours worth of work from 2020 to 2023 of projects that just kind of died. There was no publication and no information from the team. So protocols, we noticed, like many of you all have noticed too, that requiring a protocol actually increased the likelihood of the team actually finishing the project. And then like I was saying, we had a reorganization. So I took on the role as Associate Director of Research Services. And that's kind of led to our future directions. We are still in flux, but we're doing a lot of different things. So currently, as of July 1, we're going to be launching Asana. So we were using Airtable. We maxed out that. And we started investigating other options for our data collection. So Asana, we don't have screenshots yet because it doesn't launch till July 1 for you all, but Asana we're going to have our forms that automatically import all that information to Asana. It automatically will create a wait list for us and then help us track our different data points and create dashboards. So we're really excited to start using that because I was mainly using Airtable stuff and exporting and trying to figure out all of our data numbers. We're going to be implementing Distiller SR. So we decided to go with a Distiller for some of the reasons, like being able to manage our teams better and to protect our own time and space. Like Covenants, we can make it freely available, but Distiller has a lot more functionality for what some of our groups do, but also will allow us to kind of, you have to be working with us in order to use Distiller. We will also want to create kind of like a MOU for roles and responsibilities of librarians and researchers to kind of really gear at like those projects that fall away, or some of the issues that we've run into of like negotiating our time and space, and researchers who have like gone and changed the inclusion criteria and things like that. So really laying that out in the beginning before we even start a project. We also, I believe many of you all have also mentioned the kind of medical students who are taking on more and more of these systematic reviews because of
about 30 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And so we want to develop a Canvas course to do so that everyone has to be enrolled in. We also we want to discuss the removal of a consultative model. We want to investigate a fee-based model. Some of our groups on campus who provide similar services do that. We want to require advisors to attend the first meeting. And we want to not participate in credit-bearing courses anymore without agreements of roles, and create more policies and write and share annual reports.
Thank you, Stephanie and Lauren. This is really exciting stuff, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more. Megan Coker and Rin Gagan is next.
All right, hi there, everyone. I'm just sharing my screen. Okay, so hello, everybody. My name is Rin Gagan, and I'm here with my colleague, Megan Coker, and our presentation is One Service, Two Fabulous Teams. We'll be discussing how the University of Minnesota Libraries has grown a unified and interdisciplinary evidence synthesis service. All right, so while many institutions provide separate evidence synthesis services to different disciplines, at the University of Minnesota, we have a unified interdisciplinary evidence synthesis service. This means that our library's evidence synthesis service has one website and one intake form for all of our requests. However, we do operate as two interconnected teams to provide service to all of our schools and colleges. Our health sciences team, of which I am a part of as a medical librarian, covers the 6 health sciences schools and colleges, and our non-health sciences team, of which Megan is a part of as a science librarian, covers all of the other schools and colleges. For example, there's 10 of the other schools and colleges that we've worked with, for example, the College of Biological Science, College of Design, College of Liberal Arts, etc. And just as a note here, we use the term non-health sciences out of simplicity as an umbrella term. We don't intend to generalize the diverse range of disciplines that we serve. A little bit of a history of how our service became one unified service. The health sciences evidence synthesis team was formed first and launched in 2014 as a library service, which was formalized through the Health Sciences Library in 2014 after several years of individual health science librarians began developing individual expertise in evidence synthesis as methodologies. The individual skills that we were involved in evidence synthesis projects date back to about 2009 or so. And I will pass it over to Megan to talk about how our non-health sciences service forms.
Yeah, so in other disciplines we started seeing, I think Amy talked a little bit about this in her keynote address on Monday. Is that what day it was? Yeah. We started, starting to see, I was in nutrition and Amy in the social sciences, and started getting these requests, and and we're charged to sort of form our own team. And we originally started sort of our own non-health sciences separate service, as Rin mentioned, its own website, and then have come back to integrate the two services a lot more. So if you go to the next slide, Rin, we had to come up with our own model kind of out of necessity, because in the health sciences model, every health sciences liaison had some evidence synthesis expertise and could work with these projects. So if one came in from the school you work with, you work on it, right? We couldn't do that with the whole rest of all those other colleges and departments that you saw. Not every single other liaison at the University of Minnesota was going to build up expertise in these skills. So we built our own sort of model where we had a core team of about 6 liaisons who developed the evidence synthesis skills, and then we would partner with subject liaisons when things came in their areas, and have a reviewer or apprentice to train new people into the team. And yeah, and that worked, but our administration was very adamant that we try to integrate more, and that made a lot of sense. That for our users, they aren't sitting there going, am I in the health sciences or not, and to need to go to 2 different sites. And also there's a lot of expertise shared between these groups, and we wanted to bring that together. So over the last couple of years, we've done a lot more integrating of the team. So it is still a process now where there is one form, and we had to sort of negotiate what things are most important, and what do we need to keep on there for the health sciences, what things were too specific to health sciences, and can we make those a little more general to include everyone, and to sort of redo our form a little to fit everyone. And now when that gets submitted, there's some automation on the back end. So people select their department, and if it's in the health sciences, it goes to their coordinator. If it's outside, it goes to the other coordinators. So, and then goes through our whole process and gets sorted out. Next slide.
1 minute.
All right. And how this works is we have 3 coordinators. So there's one, Nicole Thies-Mahan from the health sciences, who leads up that portion of the service. And then Amy Riggleman and I lead up the non-health sciences portion. I bring sciences, Amy brings social sciences, and we coordinate that team together and make those decisions about what is going to go on the website and not. And we set meetings. We now, we had the individual teams meeting, and now we have a lot of joint meetings for the teams, because there's a lot of skill sharing that can happen. We can have shared workflows and files and and all of those things, and also helps, we've had a lot of staff turnover in both sides of things. And so in training those new people and making sure that we have a robust community of practice within our own organization that is cross-disciplinary. Next slide. And there are a lot of benefits to this. So in figuring out like our differences and how to bring those together and how to keep our websites, both that staff get cross-training and lots of peer support. And it's better for the users to have this consistent service across disciplines at our one institution.
Thank you, Rin and Megan. I know your services have been an inspiration to many of us. Last but certainly not least, I'm here to welcome Amy James, Ken Carivo, and Christina Chan Park.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy James, and I am the online librarian for education and information literacy at Baylor University. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Christina Chan Park, the STEM librarian, and Ken Carivo, the engineering librarian. At Baylor, we have a liaison model, and 5 of us, including our nursing librarian and health sciences librarian, are part of the systematic review team. Baylor is an R1 institution that does not have a medical school. So we started our service in June 2021, and we offer a tiered service model. In tier 1, the librarian as a consultant meets with the patron once to introduce themselves and discuss the different types of reviews and process. And the librarian might also discuss like databases and assist with search development and introduce useful tools that might be helpful. In tier 2, the librarian will meet as a facilitator, maybe 2 to 6 times. The librarian will advise in the selection of the review type, search development, citation tool setup, document acquisition, and protocol registration. And with tier 2, the librarian is acknowledged in the final publication, but is not necessarily listed as a co-author, where in the 3rd tier, the librarian is a research partner or collaborator. The librarian is listed as a co-author on the review, and this tier is obviously most appropriate for faculty members, and it involves multiple interactions where librarians are advising and assisting in research question development, selection of review type, suggestions of databases, gray literature that should be searched, the development and submission of a protocol, the search development and construction, managing citations and documents, as well as storage data archiving, and then also writing the methods section in the final review. And I believe there is a link that either Ken is putting in the chat or it's in the link section in the resources where it will take you out to our research guide that has more information on our service model. So we record our interactions, not reviews. So interactions, as you can see from the screen here, are a lot of different things. We do that in LibInsight, and we're going to show some of the trends. So just keep in mind that there will be variability by librarian as to what counts as a transaction, and that not every librarian will have updated their stats. So everyone kind of does that at different times. So interactions can be things like meetings, email threads, or just independent, work on the review itself. And as you can see here, we go to a lot of meetings and we answer a lot of emails. So if we look at the interactions by service type, we see that collaborations are characterized by a lot of emails and working sessions, while facilitations are dominated by more meetings. In facilitations, the researchers do their homework that the librarians check during the meetings, but in collaborations, the librarians do the homework while they're in constant email communication with the researchers. So if we look at the total time that librarians spend for each tier, collaborations take the most time because of the time spent actually conducting the searching.
So when our team started meeting regularly to support each other in our evidence synthesis work, we discovered that what we do to help our researchers is very different. So we wanted to verify why by looking at department differences. Since we started our services 3 years ago, we have helped researchers in 23 different departments. The top 6 departments in terms of number of interactions are marketing, psychology and neuroscience, social work, educational psychology, curriculum and instruction, and public health. So we primarily help those in the social sciences rather than the health sciences. Looking more closely at the 9 departments that have at least 10 interactions, we can see that the tiers of service for each department are very different. Marketing, social work, and public health have a lot of collaboration. Educational psychology has almost as many inquiries and consultations as collaborations, while psychology and neuroscience has mostly facilitations. These differences can be explained if we look at the classification of the project leads, faculty, grad student, postdoc, and undergrad, and what tier of service they ask for. In general, librarians serve as collaborators when faculty are project leads. But librarians are more likely to serve as facilitators for graduate students, since the graduate students are supposed to do everything for themselves, for their dissertations. But librarians do serve as collaborators and consultants for graduate students and answer general inquiries about evidence synthesis. So it turns out that because of the needs of the different departments we work with, Amy is primarily a collaborator with faculty, while I am primarily a facilitator with doctoral students. Ken does a little bit of all 3, but a lot more consultations for master students who are working on a class assignment that focuses on developing a research question rather than on searching. So that sums up why one size does not fit all, even within a single institution. So thank you for staying to the very last talk, and we look forward to your questions.
That was perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so I think now we are going to move into our 30-minute break. It's more of a 25-minute break because of, in true fashion, I got us swung the other way where we're running a little late now. So, but thanks for bearing with us, and thank you all to all of our presenters. A lot of good stuff to think about. Keep thinking about your questions. Bring them to the hour-long session here in about 25 minutes. And just as a reminder, that is in a separate meeting space, so we are going to close this meeting down in the break. Janessa?
Break. I wanted to add that I'm going to copy over the Q&A questions that haven't been answered yet. We have 4 outstanding questions. That's what open Q&A is for. We've almost built in enough time. And so don't worry if you haven't been able to hear a verbal answer to your question or gotten a written response. I see some folks are writing right now. So if it's not answered, don't worry, we're not going to lose it either. Or you're welcome to bring it yourself over, but I've got them on my list. Sounds great.
All right. We'll see you all shortly at the top of the hour.
See you at the next one. Bye.